것으로 지금 확인이 되었고 거기에 따라서 자동으로 저희가 어떤 절차를 수행하고 하는 것이 지금 장애가 있어서 발사를 오늘 부득이하게 취소를 하게 되었다 말씀을 드리고요.
모든 사람이 다 즐겁게 볼 수 있는 날 할 수 있으라고 아마 그렇게 된 거라고 우리 긍정적인 마음으로 생각하고 즐겁게 돌아갑니다. 편안해.
Dr. Oh always stays positive because he values the effort rather than the result.
우리가 이제 보면서 많은 성공 사례들을 이제 보지만 이 성공 사례를 벤치마킹하는 건 별로 의미가 없을 수도 있어요. 왜냐하면 그거는 뭐 잘된 곳길의 조합에서 성공된 거지만 그 하나 뒤에는 100개의 실패 사례가 있습니다. 그래서 이런 실패 사례를 살펴보면서 내가 무엇이 부족한가를 살피는 것이 오히려 도약하는 길이라고 생각해요.
In 2015, Dr. Oh stunned the world by winning the DARPA Robotics Challenge against all odds. We encourage Dr. Oh Junho's endeavors to surprise the world with his research, which he carries out with curiosity and joy.
포기할 걸 걱정하면 도전을 못해요. 사실 도전한다는 거는 많은 생각과 노력의 결과입니다. 시작하면 시작이 방해이고 하다 보면 포기를 이을 만한 용기가 생깁니다. 그래서 보면 결국은 나도 모르게 어느새 내가 생각하던 곳을 달리고 있다는 걸 알게 될 겁니다. 용기를 가지고 도전하죠.
Welcome to the Globalists. Welcome to the Globalists. Welcome to the Globalists. We're in a new set, a brand new set.
I am a globalist. And I'm the globalist.
And I'm the globalist who wants to bring Jang right into your kitchen.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
Roadmap unveiled.
The Lee Jae Myung administration has rolled out its 5-year blueprint to steer South Korea's future. We break down the key priorities and what's in store. Back-to-back diplomacy. Just before his high-stakes summit with U.S. President Donald Trump, President Lee Jae Myung will head to Japan for talks with Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. Rain, again. Heavy downpours are drenching South Korea's capital region, with the country on high alert as the rain shows no sign of letting up through tomorrow.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this Wednesday evening. I'm Song Yu-jin, filling in for Kim Da-mi. Our top story tonight begins at the presidential office. A 5-year policy roadmap was unveiled today for the new Lee Jae Myung administration. Now, the focus is on forging an AI ecosystem to seek new growth engines, as well as upgrading South Korea's so-called three-axis defense system. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min starts us off.
Exactly 70 days after the new administration set sail, following the snap election, a comprehensive policy roadmap has been unveiled for the next 5 years.
국민이 주인인 나라, 함께 행복한 진짜 대한민국을 만들어 가겠습니다. 국민이 하나 되는 정치로 갈등과 대립을 넘어 통합의 길로 나아가겠습니다.
In line with this goal, 3 principles were set: unity, fairness, and pragmatism. President Lee Jae Myung was speaking at an event in Seoul on Wednesday, where a set of blueprints was made public by the State Affairs Planning Committee, which now concludes its 2-month-long job as a de facto transition team. Included were 123 tasks in 5 areas, including politics, the economy, and foreign affairs.
The Republic of Korea is mired in low growth. We need a new framework in line with the changing environment.
Focus was on creating an AI ecosystem centered around AI chips as a future growth engine. On top of that, the new government aims to usher in the KOSP 5000 era through forging an environment that is more investment-friendly. When it comes to foreign affairs and security,
we will upgrade the three-axis defense system to secure deterrence of our own against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats.
The three-axis system refers to a 3-pronged system consisting of the Korea Massive Punishment and Retaliation, the Kill, Train, Preempt, Strike platform, and the Korea Air and Missile Defense System. Seoul also plans to retake wartime operational control from Washington during East term. On top of that, the defense system will be bolstered to match the changing security environment, while seeking to improve inter-Korean relations. Other goals include elevating South Korea as a global cultural powerhouse, with the aim of nurturing the K-culture market worth 300 trillion won, roughly $216 billion. Also announced were constitutional reform to better embody the principle of people's sovereignty, as well as prosecutorial reform to reduce the power that's often been too heavy on prosecutors. To carry out those policy tasks, a total of 210 trillion won is needed along the way, according to the committee, which will be secured through taxes and belt tightening. What was unveiled on Wednesday will be under review by the cabinet before confirmed. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And staying at the top office, President Lee Jae Myung has named new nominees to head the Education and Gender Equality Ministries. Chief of Staff Kang Hoon-sik announced on this Wednesday that Choi Kyo-jin, the current superintendent of Sejong Metropolitan City Office of Education, has been chosen to lead the Education Ministry, a post that also serves as Deputy Prime Minister. Kang described Choi as an education expert who has dedicated 4 decades to the field. And lawyer Won Min-kyung, who has served on the National Assembly's Gender Equality Advisory Committee, has been nominated as Minister of Gender Equality and Family. Both positions have remained vacant after the president's initial picks withdrew or resigned following allegations of plagiarism and workplace abuse. And our other major top story tonight, President Lee Jae Myung's summit diplomacy. Now, a day after setting the date for the South Korea-U.S. summit, the presidential office today announced that President Hee will first visit Japan next weekend for talks with Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. Our Park Kwon reports.
A Korea-Japan summit will take place next week. The presidential office officially announced on Wednesday that President Lee plans to head to Japan for 2 days from August 23rd to meet his Japanese counterpart, Prime Minister Ishiba. This means his visit will take place right ahead of Lee's scheduled meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on August 25th.
We hope Lee's visit strengthens the personal relationship and trust between the two leaders. They are expected to explore ways for future-oriented cooperation between the two countries, along with their trilateral cooperation with the U.S.
The upcoming Lee-Ishiba summit comes after the two leaders agreed to immediately resume regular high-level meetings during the G7 summit held in Canada's Kananaskis in June. The presidential office added regional issues regarding peace and stability, along with other global issues may be discussed. While the exact agenda has yet to be decided on, the office added issues regarding import regulations for fisheries imports could be on the table, with the government raising potential health issues that could affect Koreans. With less than 2 weeks left until the meeting, eyes are on whether this signals a resumption of regular summits between the two countries. Park Kwon, Arirang News.
And before meeting President Lee Jae Myung at the White House later this month, U.S. President Donald Trump is set to hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin this week in Alaska. Now, ahead of that meeting, Putin spoke over the phone with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports on Kim's reaction and what could be on the table when Putin and Trump meet.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, during a phone call on Tuesday, briefed North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on the upcoming summit between himself and U.S. President Donald Trump. Putin is set to meet Trump in Alaska on Friday to discuss the Ukraine war, as U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff's visit to Russia on August 6th laid the foundations for the summit to take place. According to the Kremlin on Tuesday local time, Putin highly assessed Pyongyang's support for operations in the Kursk region, and the two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to further developing cooperative relations in all areas, in line with the mutual defense treaty they signed in June last year. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Wednesday, Kim Jong-un expressed his full support. Meanwhile, the White House has reconfirmed that the Putin-Trump summit is going to be a bilateral one, not involving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The White House press secretary added that the goal is to have a better understanding of how the war could end.
I think this is a listening exercise for the president. Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end.
When asked about whether the issue of dispatching North Korean troops to Russia would be discussed, Tammy Bruce, State Department spokesperson, said the content of the dialogue can only be known by the two leaders. Ukrainian President Zelensky on Tuesday vowed not to give eastern Ukrainian land, the Donbas region, to Russia, adding that it would open a bridgehead for a Russian offensive. He said Moscow would have to agree to a ceasefire before territorial issues are discussed. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, back here at home, ahead of the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule this Friday, the remains of 6 Korean independence activists will return home today from the United States, Brazil, and Canada. A repatriation ceremony was held at the Seoul National Cemetery, where Prime Minister Kim Min-seok posthumously awarded each of them the Order of Merit for National Foundation. Now, in his address, the Prime Minister said that bringing home the remains of independence fighters is a solemn duty and vowed that the government will continue these efforts until the very last hero is laid to rest. The remains will be buried at the Daejeon National Cemetery. Now, shifting focus, it seems like this summer's relentless rain isn't over yet, with heavy downpours pounding South Korea's capital region throughout the day on Wednesday. Now, authorities here are bracing for further impact, warning the rain, set to continue through tomorrow, could trigger landslides and flooding. Cha Yun-kyung has the latest.
South Korea continues to see heavy rain throughout the central region, including Gyeonggi-do province on Wednesday. Taegeukgi Island of Ongjin-gun County, Incheon, saw extreme rainfall of nearly 150 millimeters in just 1 hour. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, from 8:14 a.m. till 9:14 a.m. on Wednesday morning, around 149 millimeters of rain poured in the area, marking a near-record figure of rainfall. Even areas that didn't cross the 100 millimeter per hour threshold still saw significant rainfall well above typical downpour levels, being classified as quote-unquote heavy rainfall. Around 29 streams in Seoul have been closed off, including Cheonggyecheon and Anyangcheon streams. A heavy rain advisory had been issued in the morning in the northern parts of the city and was later raised to a heavy rain warning in the southwestern areas. Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province have activated level 2 of their emergency response measures, while the country's forestry service issued landslide warnings for some cities and counties, including Pocheon, Gapyeong, and Yangju. Advisories have been placed in nearby regions as authorities order evacuations in other affected areas as a precaution. The KMA notes that this comes from North Pacific high-pressure air expanding into the peninsula alongside hot and humid air caused by the typhoon Podul. This air, combined with the dry air coming down from the north, created a narrow rain cloud band. More specifically, fast winds blowing from the lower atmosphere at an altitude of 1.5 kilometers, known as lower jets, have been adding to a large amount of water vapor and torrential rain. As the Interior and Safety Ministry activated Level 2 of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters response measures, authorities are calling on strict management and preemptive closure of flood-prone areas to prevent further damage. Though heavy rain is expected to continue throughout Wednesday, it will ease off nationwide by Thursday afternoon, and related agencies will be closely monitoring conditions. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
And now to the latest on the investigations involving former President Yoon Suk-yeol and former First Lady Kim Keon-hee. Following arrest on corruption charges, the special counsel leading the probe says Kim will appear for questioning tomorrow morning. Now, this marks the very first time in South Korea's history that a former presidential couple has been detained at the same time. Pyun Ye-young reports on the developments.
Kim Keon-hee, the wife of impeached former President Yoon Suk-yeol, was arrested late on Tuesday on charges of stock manipulation, interference in party nominations, and political influence peddling. A special counsel team set up to investigate Kim has summoned the former First Lady to appear for questioning at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Meanwhile, the special counsel team has launched a raid on the People Power Party to investigate allegations that large numbers of Unification Church members joined the party. On Wednesday morning, investigators were dispatched to the PPP central headquarters in Yeouido to secure electronic data needed for the probe. They presented a search and seizure warrant and received the necessary materials through voluntary submission. Kim is accused of taking part as a funding source in the Deutsche Motor stock rigging scheme from 2009 to 2012, meddling in People Power Party candidate selections in recent elections, and accepting an illicit lobbying request from a broker from the Unification Church in 2022. The Seoul Central District Court cited concerns over destruction of evidence as the main reason for issuing the arrest warrant. Kim was moved to the Seoul Southern Detention Center, where she waited in a holding room for detainees before she was transferred to a housing unit. Her arrest means all privileges as a former First Lady were revoked, and her security detail was fully withdrawn. However, like her husband, she will be assigned a dedicated correctional officer and kept separate from other inmates during exercise and bathing. Kim first appeared for questioning in front of the special counsel team last week, where she made a public apology.
I am truly sorry that a nobody like myself has caused concern for the people. I will faithfully undergo the questioning.
Her husband, Yoon Sung-yeol, is behind bars on insurrection charges. While several other former South Korean presidents have previously served prison terms, this is the first time in the nation's history that both the former president and their spouse have been jailed at the same time. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
Now, on the economic front, South Korea's tech sector posted strong export numbers last month, despite ongoing uncertainties sparked by the Trump administration's tariff policies. Now, the driving force? Semiconductors. Park Jun-han breaks down the figures.
South Korea's information and communication technology exports saw a record-breaking performance in July. Exports of ICT products for the month reached $22.19 billion, a 14.5% increase from the same period last year, according to data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Wednesday. Despite uncertainties stemming from U.S. tariff policies, this marks the highest July export figure ever recorded for the sector, producing a trade surplus of $8.87 billion. The driver behind the surge was semiconductors. Semiconductor exports posted an over 31% increase in July to $14.7 billion, driven by rising prices for memory semiconductors and strong demand for high value-added chips, such as high bandwidth memory and double data rate 5. This marks the fourth consecutive month of year-on-year record-breaking semiconductor exports.
With the growth of the AI industry, sales of HBM memory semiconductors for AI systems are rising, and as HBM is a high-value product, it is positively impacting South Korea's tech exports.
However, not all sectors showed as strong a performance. Display exports fell almost 9% due to uncertain demand in foreign industries, while mobile phone exports dropped almost 22%, though strong finished product sales partially offset declines in components. Exports of computers and peripherals declined by about 17%, affected by the high baseline set by last year's surge in solid-state drive shipments and a temporary slowdown in demand. The strength in exports once again underscored South Korea's resilience in the global ICT market, particularly in semiconductors, despite ongoing trade uncertainties. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
And staying in the tech world, disgraced cryptocurrency mogul Kwon has pleaded guilty in the United States to 2 fraud charges. Now, with the plea deal, Kwon is expected to face no more than 12 years in prison, with half of his sentence potentially behind bars here in South Korea. Lee Jae has more.
Disgraced South Korean cryptocurrency mogul Kwon on Tuesday pleaded guilty in the United States to 2 fraud charges connected to the $40 billion collapse of Terraform Labs' digital currency ecosystem. The 33-year-old entered the plea at a Manhattan federal court, where under the deal with prosecutors, Kwon will face no more than 12 years in prison if he abides by the agreement. This is despite 9 charges he was facing under the indictment and sentencing guidelines calling for roughly 25 years in prison. Sentencing is scheduled for December 11th. Also, as part of the plea deal, Kwon admitted to conspiring to commit commodities, securities, and wire fraud. He will also forfeit over $19 million, proceeds authorities say were illegally gained. Kwon will also relinquish his stake in Terraform and its cryptocurrencies. Meanwhile, if Kwon serves half his sentence and meets all conditions of the plea bargain, the U.S. Justice Department will support his request to transfer to South Korea under the International Prisoner Transfer Program. Kwon has long requested that he be extradited to his home country to serve prison time in South Korea. However, he also faces separate criminal charges in South Korea. Kwon co-founded Terraform Labs in 2018, developing the so-called stablecoin Terra USD, pegged to the US dollar to avoid price swings. But in 2022, the token's value collapsed, wiping out about $40 billion from Terra USD and its sister coin Luna, leaving investors around the world with major losses. Lee Jae, Arirang News.
And on the cultural front, as mentioned earlier, with 2 days until the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japan's colonial rule, For our final story tonight, we trace the country's journey of resistance through a special exhibition highlighting independence activists and their belongings. Park Hyo-bin gives us a look inside the radiant heritage of independence.
Korea's darkest days and the courage of those who refused to bow now gathered in one place. To mark the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule, a special exhibition at Deoksugung Palace brings together over 110 artifacts from the late 19th century to the day the nation reclaimed its freedom. For the first time, Korean independence hero An Jung-gun's calligraphy is being showcased to the public. These two letters, meaning green bamboo, show his strong opposition to Japanese rule. His final brushstrokes, made in a cold Risun prison cell before his execution, capture not only defiance against Japan, but also a longing for peace in Asia and respect for human dignity. From here, the story turns to lesser-known independence fighters. Min Young-hwan took his own life in protest after Japan's illegal Ulsa Treaty stripped Korea of its sovereignty, writing, "If our freedom and independence are restored, I shall gladly smile even in the afterlife." Manifestos and letters from Korea's civilian militias, known as the Righteous Armies, also bear the weight of defiance, with some returning to Korea only last year, after decades in Japan. The spirit of defiance is also preserved in the national flag, a Taegeukgi found at Jingonsa Temple, riddled with holes and burn marks. Believed to have been made during the March 1st independence movement in 1919, it bears the Korean flag's Taegeuk symbol and trigrams painted in black ink over the Japanese flag, amplifying the message of resistance.
This Taegeukgi national flag of Korea, found at Jingwansa Temple, is even more meaningful, as it shows just how fiercely our independence fighters carried out their work in secrecy.
Bringing these treasures together is what makes this exhibition truly historic.
While marking the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation, this exhibition is most meaningful for bringing together authentic resistance heritage from both institutions and individuals in one place.
Liberation was never given. It was earned with blood, sweat, and hope. 80 years on, their courage still lights the path toward the freedom they dreamed of. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Rain has been falling everywhere today. Due to a slow-moving front that affected the south yesterday, rain is now concentrated mainly in the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province today. Therefore, heavy rain warnings and advisories have been issued in those areas. By tomorrow, there will be up to 200 millimeters of rain in northern parts of Gyeonggi-do province, up to 150 in the Seoul metropolitan area, center and northern parts of Gangwon-do province, and up to 100 millimeters in southern parts of Gangwon-do province and northern parts of the Chungcheong-do provinces. Seoul and Busan will start warm at 26 degrees Celsius tomorrow morning, Jeju at 27 degrees. Daily highs will go up to 29 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gyeongju 35 degrees. Rain in the central parts of the country will mostly stop on Friday morning. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. I'm Song Yujin in Seoul. For all of us here at Arirang, thank you so much for your time and hope you have a great night.
(2025) celebrates the 80th anniversary of Liberation, a place filled with culture, history, and diverse experiences. This is the Independence Hall of Korea. Upholding the values of the independence movement, and together with the whole nation, we will make Korea great. The Independence Hall of Korea.
저는 만 5살에 바이올린을 시작했는데요. 바이올린 소리를 워낙 좋아했어서 그 특유의 따뜻함과 약간 사람의 목소리 같은 목소리를 갖고 있거든요, 바이올린이. 저는 무대에 올랐을 때보다는 이제 혼자 연습할 때 더 큰 희열을 느끼는데 제가 표현하고자 하는 음악이 잘 나왔을 때 그때 가장 큰 기쁨을 느끼는 것 같아요. 그래서 저만의 색깔을 어떻게 하면 찾아갈 수 있을까 그걸 제일 많이 고민하는 것 같아요. 아무래도 연습을 할 때는 이제 생각과 고민을 많이 하는 반면에 무대에서 연주할 때는 정말 머릿속을 비우고 아무 생각도 안 하려고 하는 것 같아요. 무대에서는 자유롭게 콩쿨 무대도 저만의 독주라고 생각하는 자세를 가지려고 하고 있어요. 사실 바이올린과는 거의 제 인생의 대부분을 같이 해왔기 때문에 저를 힘들게 할 때도 많지만 제가 가장 사랑하고 아끼는 존재입니다. 작곡가가 전달하고 싶은 메시지와 또 제 자신이 관객들에게 전달하고 싶은 메시지를 모두 다 설득력 있게 잘 전달할 수 있는 그런 연주자가 되고 싶습니다.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고
더 멀리 갈 수 있어. 닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발. 신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. The Vietnamese head of state is in South Korea this week on a visit carrying significant diplomatic and economic weight. Meeting President Lee Jae Myung on August 11th, two leaders agreed to deepen their comprehensive strategic partnership, expanding cooperation in defense, economy, science, culture, and infrastructure as well. Businesses from both countries also gathered in Seoul to explore new opportunities as the two sides set a goal to nearly double trade volume to $150 billion by 2030. Agreements were reached on critical mineral supply chains, high-speed railways, nuclear power, and defense industry collaboration. And with more than 10,000 Korean companies already active in Vietnam, the outcomes of this visit could shape the next phase of economic growth and regional strategy, even more developments to watch for in the months ahead. Now, for a deeper discussion on this, we connect to Chun-Woo Lee, Representative Director at the Yun and Yang Law Vietnam, LLC. A big welcome.
Thank you for inviting me to have the discussion today.
Thank you for joining us. And also joining us is Lee Jae Myung, Senior Fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Good to see you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Right, so let's begin our discussion right away with Dr. Lee. So like I've said, on the 11th, South Korea and Vietnam adopted a joint statement on deepening comprehensive strategic partnership, covering strengthened cooperation in various sectors, of course. First, let me ask, how would you assess the overall outcome of this summit?
Well, the summit itself and the joint statement, everything has went very smoothly this time. And it looks like the new Lee Jae Myung administration had a good start when it comes to the government foreign policy and diplomacy. And Lee Jae Myung administration really needed to show its commitment to Vietnam and Southeast Asia as soon as possible. And given the strategic and economic, also social-cultural importance of Vietnam and the ASEAN countries to South Korea. And as you know, the Vietnam and Korea have had really cordial relations for the past few decades, and trade and investment has been kind of booming, and cultural people-to-people exchanges are thriving. And particularly in recent years, the bilateral partnership has been deepening in security and defense area as well. So this summit and joint statement covered all these major development between the two countries. So overall, it was a really great start for bilateral relations under our new Korean leadership. And also it was a good sign for Korea's diplomatic approach to ASEAN as a whole.
Right, so it was definitely a broad agreement, and it really does sound like a meaningful step for both countries moving forward. Now let's also bring in Director Lee into the conversation. So we hear you're currently based in Vietnam. What is the local sentiment regarding this summit, and also how do people in Vietnam actually view the results that have been achieved?
Well, the news media in Vietnam conveyed the details of the summit meeting and the joint statement, and emphasized that the party secretary Do La was the first ever state guest invited to Korea after the current president Lee Jae Myung took office in June. The media also focuses on the warm hospitality that was given to the party secretary and his delegates. I saw in Vietnam media that during this visit, the inauguration ceremony of the torso statue of Ho Chi Minh took place at the Vietnamese embassy in Seoul, and Yonsei University also conferred the party secretary an honorary doctorate degree in politics. So I can say that in general, the sentiment in Vietnam is quite positive, and the party secretary's visit this time is well regarded in Vietnam. as a successful diplomatic event that shows an upgrade in Vietnam's national status and prestige.
Wow, so it sounds like the local mood has also been largely positive as well. Now, Director, let's look a little bit specifically at the trade developments. The two nations agreed to expand bilateral trade from the current level of about $86.7 billion to $150 billion in 5 years. How do you think this economic cooperation plans announced at the summit will translate into actual real opportunities for Korean companies?
Yes, the joint statement actually mentions virtually all industry sectors. And it's understandable because Korean companies are already in Vietnam in all industry sectors. The most notable implication is that now we are entering into a next level of cooperation. Now the focus is with the high value-added, high technology industries, which is largely in line with Vietnam's recent industry policy drive. Specifically, the high-tech electronics, semiconductor, nuclear power, rare earth elements, high-speed railway, new urban development, and smart city project, these are mentioned, and is expected to facilitate the Korean companies' possible investment in those sectors. The climate change adaptations and energy transition was also mentioned, and I expect it may lead to more favorable investment conditions for those renewable energy companies to make investment in Vietnam. The current bilateral trade level of $86.7 billion consists of 58 billion exports from Korea and 28 billion exports from Vietnam. And Korea and Vietnam is the third largest trade partner to each other. It's next only to China and the US. If the collaborations in the high value-added sectors are widely made in the near future, raising the trade volume up to $100 billion in 5 years, I believe it could be possible and will not be a mere proclamation of numbers.
So, borrowing your words, this whole next level of cooperation could really bring significant opportunities for Korean companies there. Now, let's also look into the bigger picture of global trade. So, amid the restructuring of trade systems, Dr. Lee, what is the diplomatic significance and importance of the decision to roughly double this trade volume in the next 5 years? Do you think this could be seen as part of a broader move to strengthen economic relations with the ASEAN?
Yeah, I guess so. The decision regarding the doubling Korean-Vietnam trade within next 5 years has got two different implications. First, on the ASEAN front, the Korea's economic partnership, especially the trade, has been kind of a backbone of the bilateral relation between ASEAN member states and South Korea. And the trade with Vietnam accounts for roughly half of Korea's trade with whole ASEAN countries combined. So the expanding trade relation with Vietnam has significant impacts on further promoting ASEAN-Korea trade, which is kind of mutually beneficial. And the second implication is for the regional or the global trade order. As you know, the Trump administration this year introduced a new tariff policy toward almost every country in the world, and it is a big risk for regional and global trade. And even someone calls it a U.S. version of economic coercion. So it is also a major concern. This Trump administration's tariff policy is also a major concern for trade-dependent countries like Korea and ASEAN members, including Vietnam. So one of the ways to overcome this economic risk brought by the Trump administration is to promote intra-regional trade. So Vietnam-Korea bilateral trade is a part of it. So the doubling our trade volume between Korea and Vietnam is so important in this context. So the commitment to further deepen trade partnership between the two parties, between Korea and Vietnam, is meaningful in this perspective. But the effort shouldn't stop here. There's more to do. regional countries need to work together and give a fresh boost to existing trade agreements like RCEP and CPTPP. By revitalizing these agreements, we can keep the free trade system in our region. And there's a lot of things that South Korea and Vietnam can cooperate on this matter.
Right. So with the risks posed by the latest tariff imposition of the Trump administration, bilateral trade with Vietnam, between Vietnam and South Korea, would be definitely even more important at this point. Now, we are aware that there are more than 10,000 Korean companies in Vietnam currently operating there, and the two countries agreed to work closely to ensure stable business activities there. From a national policy perspective, Director Lee, what measures do you think are necessary to guarantee these companies' stable operations?
Yes, that's a very well-timed question. And I will mention that one big progress in this summit is that Korea committed to facilitate Vietnamese employees' employment in Korea based on Korea's employment permit system. And it's essential for economic collaboration to allow both countries' employees to reside stably in other countries. So same for the Korean employees in Vietnam. So currently, most of the Korean employees in Vietnam have to renew their work permits every 2 years, regardless of whether they just arrived or whether they have been there for more than 10 years without any problem. And in practice, this is not a simple process, and it takes a lot of time and efforts in preparing application documents. Besides the work permit issues, there are regulatory requirements which might look arbitrarily lengthy and partially onerous to foreign investors. And it may be an obstacle to an investment and business activities in Vietnam. Even where the law allows certain activities without requiring regulatory approval, there are many instances where the local government's regulatory practices deviate from what is clearly stated in the law. So more than anything, transparency is the key. And the transparency in providing tax and other benefits in the sectors favored by the government would be the key to the success in high-tech transformation of Vietnam. So we understand that the Vietnamese government is also committed to regulatory reform to make it more transparent and clear. And we should also understand that it may take a bit of time to achieve it.
So government level support would be essential to keep those businesses secure. Now, on the resources front, the summit between the two leaders also led to an agreement to expand supply chain cooperation on critical minerals like rare earths. So in the era where resource protectionism has weaponized rare earths, what kind of diplomatic benefits could cooperation with Vietnam bring, Dr. Lee?
At least since the U.S.-China strategic competition, the economic security and supply chain issue has been one of the most important, one of the top priority of every country in the world. And the South Korea is not an exception. The Korean government put so much emphasis on economic security and supply chain issue, and it will become more and more important in the coming years. South Korea has its own risk of supply chain, especially in the context of U.S.-China strategic competition, and we don't have much minerals or rare earths in this country. And as everyone remembers, we experienced a few cases of a supply chain crisis before. So the Korean government has made effort to secure supply of critical minerals and rare earths, which is very vital for South Korea's economic stability and prosperity. So the agreement between Korea and Vietnam this time is a part of, I guess, this broader effort by the South Korean government, and especially as a part of the agreement between Korea and Vietnam. The two countries agreed to set up Vietnam-Korea Critical Mineral Supply Chain Center, which I welcome so much. And Vietnam is well known for its vast reserve of rare earths and some critical minerals. the critical mineral supply chain cooperation will further expedite South Korea's investment in Vietnam, and the increased Korea's investment will create more jobs and facilitate technology transfer to Vietnam. So it's kind of win-win strategy between Korea and Vietnam. And of course, with this closer cooperation between Korea and Vietnam, the partnership between the two countries will be even more strategic. So it's kind of upgrading our bilateral partnership between Korea and Vietnam.
Right, definitely. Let's also touch upon another side of the achievement, which is security and defense. They agreed to expand the stage for Korean defense exports, and the two nations actually agreed to restart the Korea-Vietnam Defense and Military Cooperation Committee, which had been suspended since 2008, and to strengthen defense cooperation, of course. So, Dr. Lee, in this complex geopolitical environment of the South China Sea, what is the strategic significance of this latest move?
Well, it's basically, security and strategic issues kind of sensitive when it comes to Korea and ASEAN and Korea-Vietnam cooperation. And before I answer to your question, I should take note this. Well, the committee that you just mentioned was suspended and resumed with this summit. But with or without the defense and defense the committee, the defense and defense industry cooperation between Korea and Vietnam has been well developing in the past few years. Now, with the resumption of the committee, the cooperation will be even deeper in the coming years. And also the deeper defense industry cooperation was mentioned in the summit and in the joint statement. So this development bodes very well for strategic cooperation between Korea and Vietnam in the coming years. And when it comes to South China Sea or the East Sea, as Vietnam calls it, the joint statement and the press conference by the President and Secretary General, there was mention on this issue of South China Sea. And the two parties, Vietnam and South Korea, basically agree on major points regarding the issue of South China Sea, such as respect for international law, freedom of navigation and overflight, and the opposition to militarization in the area. And I don't believe that the Korean government has intention to involve itself directly into the dispute in the South China Sea by the enhancing defense and defense industry cooperation with Vietnam. However, intended or not, the deeper defense cooperation, of course, will have some geopolitical implication in the South China Sea. And I should mention this last point. On the other hand, the defense industry export to Vietnam has another aspect. At the moment, Vietnam is trying to modernize its military and trying to replace its old weapon system, which was imported from the Soviet. And so the Korea-Vietnam defense industry cooperation will help Vietnam to achieve this military modernization goal. So it is kind of another win-win cooperation area between Korea and Vietnam.
Right, so it does look like a very important industry to look forward to between the two countries. Now, let's also touch upon infrastructure and development. South Korea and Vietnam also agreed to cooperate in areas like nuclear power, high-speed railways, and new city development, like we've been talking about a while ago. Now, this opened new opportunities for Korean companies in Vietnam, of course. Director Lee, what kind of major localization challenges do Korean companies actually face when investing or even entering the Vietnamese market?
Yeah, it's very important to understand the nature and the historical reason for the project itself, the needs of the sponsors and government, and the regulatory hurdles, especially in the infrastructure project. So for nuclear power, we need to first understand that it took quite a long time in Vietnam until the nuclear power became a part of Vietnam's power grid. It was only last year. So the nuclear power development is expected to happen on a step-by-step basis, and it may take a bit of time to result in actual export of a nuclear power technology or plant. So for the high-speed railway project, this is actually a huge project which would alone take as much as $67 billion, and already a variety of proposals have been made to the government. Same for the new urban development plans. There were many plans already been proposed in several other districts and regions other than the Bangli this time, with different concepts. These infrastructure projects involve a bunch of regulatory hurdles, including project approvals at different levels of government authorities, the land compensation issues and the environmental issues. Yet we need to meet the sponsors' needs of fancy high-tech model. So one of the ways to navigate through these regulatory hurdles is to make a joint effort with a reputable business partner in Vietnam. Vietnam government recently plans to bring up domestic private sector companies to develop this economy, and it appears that more incentives and supports may be given to Vietnam's private companies that bring in foreign investment in high value-added sectors. So this means that Korean companies may also consider teaming up with the Vietnamese local partners for the joint venture or joint partnership to make an investment in the future.
Well, that will be definitely some big good news for local companies trying to enter the Vietnamese market. Now, before we conclude our discussion, finally, Dr. Lee, looking ahead, this summit is seen as a starting signal for expanding and deepening Korea's diplomacy in Southeast Asia in general. So for the Lee Jae Myung administration's successful pragmatic diplomacy, how should South Korea's Southeast Asia policy move forward?
Well, there are tons of recommendations that I can make, but just briefly 3 points. The most important thing is to announce an initiative specifically tailor-made towards Southeast Asia and ASEAN as soon as possible. As was the case that the new Southern policy under previous Moon Jae-in administration. So the government have to make a quick action to announce its policy. The second, the consistency and the continuity in policy is very crucial, and there should be strong political will from the leadership to push this Korea-ASEAN relations forward. And the third point is the message toward ASEAN countries is very important, but at the same time, we have to look into our own society. We have lots of Southeast Asian nationals here in Korea, and the Korean government has to keep a close eye on the human rights issues of those Southeast Asia nationals in South Korea. Thank you.
Right. So it seems all in all, it points towards a hope of deeper engagement in Southeast Asia ahead, and we will be definitely paying close attention to the latest developments. But thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Director Lee. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, and you're welcome. Yeah.
And of course, Dr. Lee as well. We really appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you so much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
With her calm voice, anchor Bae Eun-ji delivers news you can